Welcome to Lyric Lab Poetry. My name is Martin Jago, and in this video we're going to explore a very famous poem indeed, and we're going to look at that poem as a way of exploring a particular type of, I guess I mean to say, form of poetry. Now, as soon as you hear the word form as a free verse writer, alarm bells might start ringing, but just hold on a minute. This is part of a conversation in poetry that's been going on for over 100 years. Since the advent of modernism, poets are questioning and challenging, but also exploring received forms in poetry to see what they might continue to yield for us as contemporary free verse poets. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. Now, this is my laptop, but the poem I'm about to show you with a click of a button is one of the most famous. It's probably the most famous poem in the English language by a Welsh poet. That poet, of course, is Dylan Thomas, who died, I think, in 1953. What did he say? I've drunk 18 straight whiskies, and I think that's a record. And then he died. He died the next morning, actually, I think in St. Vincent's Hospital in New York. And it was a tragic end to a relatively young man, 39 years old. Some lament that he died so young, but you know, it is what it is. I think we have to celebrate what we have, not sort of lament what he didn't live to create, but use that short life as a way of focusing on some of the amazing poetry that he created. Now, it's worth saying, and I should absolutely say this, that of course, this is an English language poem. He is a Welsh writer, and Wales is a country and a culture that is steeped in language and steeped in storytelling and myth and song and poetry. And that is a far-reaching history over many, many hundreds, maybe thousands of years, that is rooted in the Welsh language. And sadly for me, that is a world that I'm cut off from because I don't speak Welsh. And so the only access to that work I have is through translation. I did live and work in Wales for about 6 years. And I do speak a few small phrases and words, you know, all the basic stuff you might expect in a phrase book. Please and thank you. And of course, Yucky Da, and a few songs, Alan amor mai roses cochion, Alan amor mai liz gwinion, and Keskira nos ohore de bore, and all that kind of stuff. And this one, I suppose, which is not a song, O dad and dali deb with our dayuna diochanweth, cans out lower del bob dydd ein lluniaeth an llweneth. Amen. Which is the prayer, which is the grace of Kellogg College, Oxford. And of all the graces, of all the colleges at Oxford and Cambridge, it's the only one that's not in Latin, and it's the only one that's in Welsh. And it's in Welsh because that college was founded on St. David's Day. St. David, of course, the patron saint of Wales and the Welsh. And if I didn't know that, I would have guessed Jesus College, Oxford, because Jesus College was founded around about in the 1570s under a royal charter from Elizabeth I. And it was a group of Welshmen, a lawyer and some clergymen that came together and basically paid for the foundation of that college. And I think it trained Welsh clergy, and about 100 years after its establishment, all of the fellowships and scholarships to Jesus College, Oxford were for Welsh-only applicants. So there you are. I digress hugely. So let's get back to this very famous poem. You probably know the one I'm talking about. It is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. I'm going to share the screen with you with a click of a button. So here we have it. Let me just read the poem first. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of a light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce eyes, your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And that really needs to be read in a Welsh accent. I don't have one, but there's a great recording of Richard Burton reading that poem. Let's look again at the poem in terms of its structure. Of course, it's a wonderful poem. I think that it has this kind of energy to it. It's a passionate poem, but also for me, it feels very tender. Do not go gentle into that good night. Every night is a good night if you will it to be. If you breathe, keep breathing. It's about surviving and living and what we give up as and when we die. And there's a kind of intensity to it I just think is fascinating. And the structure's fascinating too, isn't it? Because what we've actually got here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 stanzas of 3 lines each. They're tercets. And then the last stanza, curiously, has 4 lines. So 19-line poem over these 6 stanzas. And in terms of rhyming, actually, it's very simple. There are just 2 rhymes in the poem throughout. There is the night, light, that ite sound that comes at the end of some lines. And then there is the a, the day sound, they, bay. That's the internal rhyme in the middle of each stanza. But what's happening here in the Villanelle, and what makes the Villanelle so interesting for us as contemporary poets, is this device it employs throughout of repeating the first and third line of the very first stanza. They show up regularly throughout the rest of the poem. So if you look, for example, here at the second stanza, we've got 2 new lines we've never heard before. But then we get to the third line, it is actually the very first line of the poem. It's the first line of stanza 1. So the first line of stanza 1 repeats itself. And then when we get to the third stanza, it is the last line. Again, we have 2 new lines here. And then the last line actually is the third line of stanza 1. The first line and the third line. And again, the next stanza ends with the first line of the poem. And then the next stanza ends with the third line of the poem. And then when we get to the very end, again, like every stanza before, we have 2 new lines. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Here on the last stanza, and the reason it sticks out because it has 4 lines, not 3, is that because both the first and the third line of stanza 1 repeat here at the very end to bring us to the close of the poem. And what a fantastic example it is too. Now, I want to show you a book. This is a really fabulous book. It's simply called Villanelles. And the poem I've just read for you is an example of a villanelle that has this kind of first line and third line repetition, those 2 lines from the first stanza in successive stanzas repeating themselves until we get to the end when they're both repeated and bring the poem to a close. That is a villanelle, and here's a book called Villanelles. In fact, it's an anthology of villanelles. I love the book so much. It's a very beautiful book, very beautifully bound, and it's really good. The stuff inside is really good too, and it's organized in a very interesting way. It has a chapter on traditional villanelles. That doesn't necessarily mean very old poems. They could be contemporary poems, but they are traditional in the sense that they don't deviate from the structure, from that structure I've just shared with you, that first and third line repeating, and then the rhyme scheme, those end words rhyming. So there is a section on sort of traditional villanelles with lots of wonderful poems in there, old and new. There's then a second section on contemporary villanelles, and then there's another section on villanelles, about villanelles. So I guess this is kind of poets musing on the villanelle and what it is and how it can be used to deliver the message that the poet's trying to share. And then there is the chapter I'm most interested in. The section at the end of the book is variations on the villanelle. Now, that means that contemporary poets have taken the form and done something new with it. And there are lots of really interesting examples in here. When I think about the villanelle, I also think about the pantoum, and I will share more about the pantoum in another video. The reason I think the 2 are kind of related, and they are not really related at all, although they are related in a sense of the sort of structure. They don't originate from the same time or place. but they do have something similar going on in terms of that repetition. And when I think of that repetition, I think of the kind of non sequiturs that sometimes occur in everyday conversation. I think about how people say something and then say the same thing again, how we repeat ourselves. And that might be an interesting way into a poem, thinking about applying dialogue to the Villanelle. So here's what I want you to do, and this is the poetry prompt. You're going to study that Villanelle and find Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, find it online and work out what's actually happening, as I've explained, where those lines repeat, and then have a go at a Villanelle, and maybe have a go at a Villanelle. Let's say you're at a party and you're trying to make small talk because you don't know anyone there, and this is the conversation that unfolds. Or maybe it's a commentary on that party and how difficult it can be and how socially awkward we can sometimes find ourselves when we're in a kind of setting like that where we don't know anyone. So maybe the speaker of the poem is not actually a speaker, but it's the poet's voice, the poet, the speaker commenting on that scenario. And then maybe you can use lines of dialogue that keep coming back to haunt the speaker. Maybe you say something stupid that then keeps coming back to haunt you. Very interesting structure. Another thing you can do is, and there's another book, I don't have it to hand, but it's Stephen Fry's book, which is The Ode Less Travelled, I think, is that right? It's a pun on the famous Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. There is a very good section in that book on villanelles, and I think he gives an example of a kitchen villanelle. And it's just very humorous, but it also does the job of explaining exactly how a villanelle works. First of all, a lot of people will know that poem without knowing what it's called structurally, and that's absolutely fine. But as poets, I want to just focus in on the form itself and see if we could find a way of playing with it and finding something in it that maybe no one else has found yet. And we'll do this again a few more times throughout the course of the Lyric Lab Poetry series, introducing once in a while some formal poetry and to see how we might bend the rules. Just before we go, let me just turn to the section here on which I mentioned, for me, variations on the Villanelle. I'm interested to know. Now, of course, most of the stuff in this book will be sort of copyrighted material, so I'm not going to risk infringing that copyright by reading the poems out, but there are some really wonderful poems here. I remember a poem from here. Well, after much looking, I found the poem I was searching for. It's called Flight by Dana Efland. I'm going to see if I can find a link to that and put it in the description below the video. What it does so well is to use the idea of the villanelle, of those refrains, of those repeats, to subtly return us to the sort of primary themes of the poem. So that's what the villanelle can do when you adopt it slightly in a looser way. And there are also a couple of other poems in here which are in an earlier section. There's a famous poem by Wendy Cope. It's called Lonely Hearts. There are, of course, lots of others. Now I've got stuck into them, but lots of other great villanelles here, famous ones. There's a poem here called One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. If I find a link, I will again put that in the description below the video. A wonderful poem. That's a sort of more traditional villanelle. And here it is on the opposite page from Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And speaking of wonderful Welsh writers, there's a great poem here called Grey. And it's by Graham Davies. It was commissioned for the laying of the foundation stone of the Wales Millennium Centre in Cardiff. It's a very strong piece. There's another wonderful poem I cannot find here at the moment, which is on the rather morbid subject of ash, the ashes of a deceased member of the speaker's family. And again, what the refrains give the poem is to, in a subtle way, return the reader again and again. And digging into the villanelle, you'll find that poets have a very interesting way and tricks of subtly masking or making the rhyme not the dominant thing in a poem by using enjambment and giving the language style a kind of natural feel but heightened at the same time. It's a balancing trick and one that some poets pull off fantastically well. So I highly recommend this. That is the villanelle. do have a go at your own Villanelle. Use that prompt that I gave you, the idea of maybe introducing lines of dialogue as your refrains. Thanks very much for watching, of course, and if you've liked the video, please do click the like and the subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps the channel to grow. And of course, I will be back very soon with more poetry content.